بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Welcome our viewers, Hadith disciples, students of the Sunnah. We will begin bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala our study of the beneficial matan called Nukhbatul-Fikr في اصطلاح أهل الأثر. Nukhbatul-Fikr في اصطلاح أهل الأثر. The book is called Nukhbatul-Fikr, which means Nukhba al-Fikr, selected thoughts, the best of my thoughts, regarding the terminology of the people of Al-Athar. In other words, this is a small matan, a small concise booklet or manual on Hadith terminology and Hadith science. The author, Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala, who is well known to us all, who died in the year 852 of the Hijrah, and perhaps we'll have some time to mention a brief summary of his biography, but he's well known. Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala is originally from, his roots, his lineage come from Asqalan, on the coast of Palestine, and he was born and raised in Egypt, and he lived in Cairo. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala. Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, he wrote a book called Nukhbatul-Fikr. And there's two main reasons behind the title of this book. First and foremost is that this is considered to be the khulasa, the summary, and if you want to say the juice that he squeezed out fresh from his long and intense study of the books of the people of knowledge who came before him, who wrote about Mustalah al-Hadith, who wrote about Ilm al-Hadith, who wrote about Al-Jarh wa Ta'dil, Ilm al-Rijal, so on and so forth. All of those ulama who came before him, after he read those books, studied them, critiqued, explained, extracted, he came and he took all of the khulasa, the best of all of that, those years of study, until he came up with a nukhba, a selected amount of information from his own fikr, his own thoughts, his own conclusions, his own reservations, and he came up with this small matan. So that's why he called it Nukhbatul-Fikr. The second reason behind it is that it obviously rhymes with athar. And we know there are countless ulama of the past, and even up to this current day, when they wrote books with that which is called the saja, or uslub al-saja, a rhyming style, which is a means of beauty and adornment to their books. A simple example of this is the famous, well-known book that we have behind us here, which is called, well known to everyone, Fathul Bari, Bisharhi Sahih al-Bukhari. And here is another version of the book, Fathul Bari. We have another print of the book, a very older copy, Fathul Bari, which linguistically means Fath, the conquest or the support and the blessing of Allah, who is Al-Bari, the original creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala, Bisharhi Sahih al-Bukhari, an explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari. So we see the two things once again, is that he considers his book to be a means of blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a ni'mah, it's a fath, victory, a triumph. And it also rhymes with the actual title of the original book. So he called his book Nukhbatul-Fikr, fi istilahi, the istilah, the mustalah, the lingo, the language of Ahl al-Athar, the people of Athar, yani Ahl al-Hadith, the scholars of Hadith, the traditionalists. So therefore, this is a very common style. We have so many books here in this library that we could go on and pick up, in which the ulama, they named their books, they gave their books titles which had a rhyming sense. It rhymed. Alright, this is a well-known style in the Arabic language, let alone the different books that the ulama of the past, they wrote. So therefore, that is the title of the book. Once again, Nukhbatul-Fikr في اصطلاح أهل الأثر. That is the name of the book. خير inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before we get on to the actual book and its introduction, its importance, the different virtues and special merits of the book, we want to mention some more things that we spoke about in brief in our introduction to the study of al-Bayquniyya, al-Manzuma al-Bayquniyya. And al-Manzuma al-Bayquniyya, just as we do any other book before we study, we try to make an introduction which is going to be useful for the student, useful for the hadith disciple. So therefore, we talked about, or we shed some light on a beginner and taking baby steps and learning one opinion, learning one view, and sticking to that opinion and sticking to that one view with no proof or evidence, with no second views, no differences of opinion, no technicalities, but one basic view. Then you move on and you grow, and you gradually climb the ladder, and you mature and you develop into a second view or third view, or maybe even one view with proof and evidence, still no khilaf, and you gradually progress and you move on in steps and stages. And that the beginner should avoid khilaf. The beginner should avoid, this is not absolute, but sometimes this is the reality. The beginner shouldn't even think. Sometimes the beginner should not ask. He's not questioning the teacher or the book, but he should just be a beginner. As the Arabs, they have a famous proverb that goes as يَنْبَغِي لِلْطَالِبِ أَنْ يَلْعَقَ الْعَسَلَ وَلَا يَسْأَلْ. They say that the beginning student should lick the honey and he shouldn't ask. Someone gives you a spoonful of honey, Bismillah, eat the honey. What type of honey is it? What grade of honey is it? Is it poison in the honey? Is it good? So on, just Bismillah, eat the honey. And this concept can only be implemented when you have a teacher who's trustworthy. And that's the asl of your teacher. That's another concept. Is al-asl fi shaykh al-thiqah. Okay, the rule of thumb for your teacher is that he's a trustworthy person. No one is going to deceive you or mislead you or mistreat you or going to lie to you. Alright, and that is a whole concept in itself. How to select a teacher. When, where, what are the signs, what are the do's and don'ts. How do you determine who should be your sheikh, your teacher, your instructor? Okay, so that's a concept in itself. So therefore, that's how the beginner should start off. We didn't say a student who studied for some time, for some years, he's on an intermediate level. We say a mubtadi, someone at the very beginning. You don't teach your baby different types of grammatical rules, syntax, and you teach them basic phonics. All right, basic phonics. Okay, hooked on phonics. That's what you teach a young child. All right, a toddler or preschool, whatever the case may be. Then he grows up. He has preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, until he reaches the collegiate level. And after the collegiate level, there's postgraduate studies until he becomes a doctor, PhD. And then after he becomes a doctor, there are years that go in of hardcore study until he becomes an expert specialist in language. That's a different level. So this applies to the Islamic sense, as we've mentioned before. So due to the fact that we've studied and we've completed our study of Al-Bayquniyya, hopefully you've all memorized the poem. Hopefully you've reviewed the lessons that we gave you several times. Bi-idhnillah. Now we have a new book. We move on to a new book. We're on the next stage now. Okay, we were in kindergarten. All right, now we're going to preschool, first grade. And that is Nukhbatul-Fikr. So what do we want to do now? There lies no doubt that there is a jump, all right, from Bayquniyya to Nukhbatul-Fikr. And the size of the book, and the style of the two authors, and the level of knowledge of the two authors, and the fame of the two authors, and even in some of the technical issues that have been mentioned in both books, let alone the actual Bayquniyya is Manzuma, and Nukhbatul-Fikr is Nathar. Manzuma Bayquniyya is quote unquote a poem, quote unquote. And Nukhbatul-Fikr is a normal kalam, alright, a normal metin. So it's a big difference here, alright. So therefore, we're going to turn up the heat just a little, as they say. Nukhbatul-Fikr is a bit more advanced. It's not too difficult, and it's not considered to be a book for an advanced student of knowledge. I wouldn't even say on an intermediate level. It's still a beginner's book, but it's a bit different. Alright, and you'll see from that, bi-idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, we want to take some similarities from the previous classes. Our most important goal is to explain the kalam of Hafidh ibn Hajar, not to refute Ibn Hajar, not to say what's right and what's wrong, what the other ulama said. This is wrong, this is incorrect. But the very first step in studying any book is to understand and to decode the text of the author. As one of my teachers in Islamic University said to us some years back when we were studying the College of Hadith, he says, Al-fahmu shay, wal-iqtina' shay akhar. He says, understanding something is one thing, being convinced is something totally different. So I don't have to be convinced. I don't have to necessarily agree with it. But it is the right of the author that at least I understand what he's saying. And most of the hasty, immature youth or wannabe students of knowledge, or whatever they are, most of them, 9 out of 10 of them, this is their main problem. They don't understand properly. And they're hasty in refuting and rejecting and criticizing before they've even understood what the person was saying. Many of them, unfortunately, and Allah knows best, don't have sincere intention. And this lack of sincerity becomes clear in a person's actions. Secondly, many of them, unfortunately, don't have the capacity, the mental capacity. They don't have the brain power. They're not smart enough. Not everyone, but many of them are just, excuse me for my bluntness, too stupid to even understand what somebody is saying. Let alone, they don't even care about what the person is saying. So that is a musibah ala musibah. Alright, as Allah says, ظُلُمَاتٌ بَعْضَهَا فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ. Darkness upon darkness. Like the one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَوْ فِي بَحْرٍ لُجِّيٍّ. He says, one who's in the depths of the sea, deep in the sea, at nighttime, and it's a cloudy night. It's not a clear night. He says, إِذَا أَخْرَجَ يَدْهُ لَمْ يَكَدْ يَرَاهَا. When he sticks out his hand in front of his own face, he can barely see his own hand. It's so dark. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَجْعَلِ اللَّهُ لَهُ نُورًا فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ نُورٍ. Those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give any light, they will never have any light. So therefore, there's a big problem that we have. Lack of sincerity, lack of proper understanding, lack of intelligence, and on top of that, lack of thorough training. Many of us haven't been trained in the proper manner to read and to understand the books of the ulama. So that is our first step, is to understand the maqsood of Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar. Clear. Moving on. Perhaps, if we have enough time, or if it is appropriate stage, we'll mention some other views of some of the other ulama. And if it's something that is really controversial, or even dangerous, or totally incorrect in our humble opinion, perhaps we'll point something out. Bi-idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright? What I want you to do is to take the basic lessons from Al-Fikr and add them to Nukhbatul-Fikr now. Take the stepping stone that we lay down and build upon it. Or maybe you may have to deconstruct it. You've built some concrete steps, some cement steps. Take your sledgehammer, your jackhammer, and break them down. And now build the steps again from anew. You may say that's a waste of time. Regurgitate the information, spit it back up, so on and so forth. La, it's a benefit. Because when you build something and you knock it back down, know for sure the second time you build it, you'll build it better. You build it faster. Let alone the exhaustion and the fatigue, and maybe even the frustration and the anger that you may have at your teacher for making you do the same exact thing again. And that rage, quote unquote, it produces energy. It produces vigor. It produces steam. And it pushes you forward. This is a very important concept here in studying. Alright? The master could tell his pupil to do something. He does it, he brings it back to the sheikh. The sheikh says, now rip it up. Throw it in the trash. It's garbage. The student is going to say, what? I spent hours writing this, memorizing this, so on and so forth. The sheikh says, do it again. He may tell him to do it twice or 3 times. The student's going to become frustrated and he's going to become angry. He may become upset at his teacher. But know for sure, every time he does it again, the student gets sharper and sharper and better and faster and stronger. Alright? And this is the concept of being a true student of knowledge. Building upon what you already have learned. As we said and we say all of the time, from one thing, learn 10,000 things. So that's a very important concept here with regards to Al-Fikr and with regards to Nukhbatul-Fikr. To try to take the basics and add them to what you want to study now. Another benefit of studying in stages and levels in this progressive methodology is that when you hear certain words, certain terms, certain phrases, certain concepts, you're not going to be bewildered. It's not going to be something that's totally strange, totally foreign totally exotic to your ears. Alright, but you'll have some basic background for it. That's very important. Okay? Another benefit of Nukhbatul-Fikr, like most other books of Hafidh ibn Hajar, is that his style is very compact, very clean, very sharp, very swift and tight in his actual expressions and wordings. Very seldom you're going to find a book of Hafidh ibn Hajar that is sloppy. Very seldom you're going to find a book that is all over the place. But the book is very objective, very clear, concise, right to the point. And his ibarat, as we say in Arabic, are muharrara. They're muharrara. We say they're airtight. Okay? The Bayquniya poem is not necessarily like that. He put certain things before other things. Many things that were important he left out. So on and so forth, because it was a poem, because it's concise. But Hafidh ibn Hajar's book is a bit different. Alright? Inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, before we move on, we say once again as a disclaimer, everything that we're going to study in this book, it does not mean that it is consensus of all of the ulama. Once again, we say that. Everything we're going to mention and study in this book, it does not mean that it is the opinion of the one who's teaching the book, the instructor or the translator. It does not mean that. Everything that is mentioned in this small metin, Nukhbatul-Fikr, it does not mean that it is correct and valid. Alright? It is a book of a human being. No matter how much of a genius Ibn Hajar was, no matter how much of a mountain he was, a true mountain of knowledge, huh? Not like some ignoramus living today, okay? Or another ignoramus saying that this person's a mountain, he's a mountain. No, this is a true mountain of knowledge. Jabal, bima'na al-kalima, a real mountain of knowledge, alright? Not a pile of dust and dirt and anthill, but an actual mountain. Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, no matter how much knowledge he had, no matter what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, he's a human being. He's from the sons of Adam. And we know that it's mentioned in a hadith that has been collected by Ahmed and others, narrated by Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, and a few other companions. كل بني آدم خطاء وخير الخطائين التوابون أو كما قيل. All of the children of Adam are sinners, those who make mistakes. And the best of those who make sin and those who make mistakes are those who repent. And as the great Imam of Ahlul Hadith said, Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, Aballahu an yatimma illa kitabu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuses for any book to be perfect except for his book. So there is no book after the Quran al-Kareem that is 101% perfect. Alright? And that's another concept that is very widespread among many immature students of knowledge or da'is or even scholars. They say, oh, don't read this book because it has mistakes. Don't take from this book because it has mistakes. Don't listen to this person because he has mistakes, and so on and so on and so forth. Let's dissect this speech. First and foremost, they say don't take from Fulan because he has mistakes. What does that mean? In other words, take from us. Don't take from him. Who am I to take from? Take from us. Listen to us. And that itself is party partisanship. That's Hizbiyya in its pure sense. Listen to me. Or as another ignoramus said, Jazakallahu khairan for asking me. SubhanAllah. What is this? Don't ask this person, don't go to him, but make sure you come to me. Secondly, is we understand from that statement, if Fulan has mistakes, don't take from him and take from us. That means that we are saying what? We don't have any mistakes. Because if we have mistakes, you can't take from us either. So due to the fact that you don't take from him and you take from us, because he has mistakes, that means not only are we calling you to us, which is a problem in itself, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Allah says, say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is my sabil, my way, my path. أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ. I invite people, I call people to this path upon basira. I call them to Allah's path. What did Ibn Abdul Wahhab say in Kitab al-Tawheed? وَفِيهِ التَّنْبِيهُ عَلَى الْإِخْلَاصِ. He says, in this ayah, Allah is telling us and reminding us about sincerity. لأن كثيرا من الناس إذا دعاك إلى الله فإنما يدعوك إلى نفسه أو كما قال. He says, because many people, when they call you to Allah, they're only calling you to themselves. So therefore, we don't have any mistakes. We're not human beings. We come from someone else besides Adam. Our forefather didn't make the mistake. He didn't eat from the tree. We don't come from his progeny, his posterity, his offspring. We're different. What type of aqidah is that? La, that's not what we mean. What do you mean? Well, we found mistakes in Fulan's kalam, and we didn't find any mistakes in Sheikh Fulan's kalam. Or there's no mistakes in our kalam. Khair. When we do find mistakes, clear mistakes, as the sun in the sky without any clouds, the first thing they say, why are you criticizing us? Why are you talking about us? Why don't you talk about those people? Why don't you talk about the people of innovations? Why are you criticizing, so on and so forth? So it's a no-win situation. You cannot win. So that is a fallacy. Those who say that you can't read a book or you can't study a book because it has a mistake or 2 or 3 or 4 mistakes in it. And if you took that manhaj, that methodology, that sick, perverted way of thinking, all of these books behind me and the rest of this room and the many other rooms in this house that are full with books, you will burn them because they all have a mistake in there one way or another, because those books are not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're made by the hands of men. Some books are better than others. Some books have less mistakes than others. Some mistakes are worse than others, etc. Nah, there's no doubt about that, but there's going to be a mistake. There's going to be a mistake based off of that statement of Shafi'i, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuses, Abdullah, he says, refuses for any book to be complete and 100% perfect except for his book. This is a very important concept for us to understand. And the higher up the ladder that you go in the books of the sciences of hadith, the more khilaf you find, the more statements you'll find, let alone the biography of Hafidh bin Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala. And we come across some of the issues about his life in his biography pertaining to his aqidah and so on and so forth. If you took that approach, Fulan made a mistake, Fulan said something, so on and so forth, and even worse than that, he didn't visit us, he didn't visit Sheikh Fulan doesn't know him, whatever kiss me, don't take anything from him. Even though what he says and what he gives is clearly beneficial and helps Muslims, then get rid of the books of Ibn Hajar. Don't read Nukhbatul-Fikr or Fathul Bari. Don't pick up Fathul Bari and don't study it, which is one of, if not the best explanation of Sahih Bukhari. Burn it, throw it in the trash, because it's written by Hafidh ibn Hajar. So therefore, we want to continually, bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, purge ourselves and purge others from this illness and from this poison that has been, that is seeped into the veins of many people for many years. Unfortunately, in the name of knowledge, in the name of the way of the Salaf, in the name of loving and respecting and listening to the ulama, but in reality, it has nothing to do with the way of the Salaf, has nothing to do with the way of the ulama, and has nothing to do with knowledge. So therefore, this is a brief, simple, humble introduction that we want to put to our introduction of Al-Bayquniyah when we start studying Nukhbatul-Fikr. It's very important, these points. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.